Welcome back to the Makers Podcast. Brandon, you and I have done a few of these now, but today I wanted to interview you for our audience to learn more about who Brandon Burns is.
Oh, that's very kind of you, man.
You mentioned on an earlier pod, known each other since before COVID, or I know we met during COVID. It was one or the other, but It was years ago now. So
we first became friends on MySpace, so it's been a long time.
It's been 20 years, actually.
You, me and Tom from MySpace, we're still very tight. Tech bros.
Yes, Tom from MySpace. Still killing
Remember his profile photo? It was like...
Yes. Let's start off with what you're currently doing, Teamified. What's Teamified all about?
Great question. And I promise you, I'm not just going to say great question because that's what everyone says to make someone feel good. But before I tell you what Teamified is, do you think tech company when you hear the word Teamified?
I do.
Oh, that's good.
But that's because I work in tech and it has that singular
What
word.
is that all about? I mean, because I'm a bit foreign to this.
I think, many years ago, there was a book I read, I can't even remember. It was all about how you name a tech company. And rule number one is it has to be one word.
One word. Does it also have to be deliberately misspelt?
Well, that all comes down to, can you get the domain name registered?
Really?
Yeah, and we're seeing that gold rush again with, can I get the .ai domain name? But, 20 years ago, 10 years ago, last year, even now relevant would be, can we get the .com, which is like sort of like the, can we? And look, I've been lucky enough with the businesses I've been involved with to get the .com.
Mate, if anything... Bearing witness to, I just heard you sing for the first time, and I think it's safe to say that you're a tenor, like a soprano.
I'm not going to see you on the podcast. So, but famously, I think about the movie The Social Network, where what's his name?
Well, that
Justin
guy,
Timberlake plays.
Yeah. Oh, the Napster guy, the Napster guy,
Sean.
Yeah.
When he turns around and says to Mark Zuckerberg, just Facebook, drop the. Because up to that point, it was the Facebook. So I think that was that singular moment where everything's expanded culturally from that point. But it has to be a tech company because it's one word.
I find it fascinating, mate, the whole naming of a tech company and how that all happens. And you're right, a bit of work does go into it because, God, there's some bad ones out there and they don't stick. They never stick.
I think the worst ones where you see people who, you know what they're saying, but it's misspelt. It has two Y's or two F's or two K's or two Q's, and you're like, wow, it's a word salad. I know what they're saying. But proudly, we've got the .ai or the .com domain. It's like, you've minced the word itself.
Well, that's kind of why I asked you, because that's part of the reason why we became Teamified about 6 months ago. So Simon Jones, the founders, had for about 3.5 years the same business, but it was called Patona. And in Japanese, that means partner, patona.
Great.
Correct.
So I was wondering what the origin story was of Patona.
Yeah. Jonesy actually just got back from 5 weeks in Japan and he said, I'm not having sushi for at least 6 months. I love it, but no. So we went to Sushi Train for lunch yesterday.
Just to prove him wrong.
We loved Patona. I think everyone loved the name Patona, and that's pretty memorable.
Yep.
We went on a journey where we were actually sponsoring one of our clients, Adam Schwab from Luxury Escapes. Him and Adir Schiffman from Catapult Sports have the Contrarians podcast, which is a big business podcast, gets about 10,000 downloads a week, and we sponsor it because we get ripping leads from it, right? Because their listener base is like CEOs, MDs, people like you, right? They own tech companies, they're listening in to their peers, and it's beautiful for us. And he was getting people reaching out to him directly saying, oh, what's the name of that company? Patina. And he's like, mate, I've got these great leads for you, but these people literally can't pronounce your name. And we kind of had a sneaking suspicion. But also, we did kind of think to ourselves, we are more than just a body shopping, outsourcing, offshoring company. And we're very proud of that part of our business. And it's been very good for us. It generates beautiful monthly recurring revenue. It's a profitable part of the business. It's a simple, dumb, boring business. But we've also gone on a journey over the last 18 months and built tech. We're positioning as a services business with a little bit of tech attached, whereas we wanted to come across as a tech company with a services business attached. And we realised, we need to sound like one. As simple as that sounds, so Teamified is what we became. Interestingly, we didn't do a big shouting it out to the world, PR release, we're a new name. We just kind of soft bleeded it in with our ecosystem and our community, and it actually worked better because people asked less questions. It kind of just became us, and we had a massive following and community on LinkedIn already. So we kind of worded people up to sort of go on the journey with us as we moved. Touch wood, we haven't had a lot of hiccups as a result. But if I was to bottle down for you what we do, we help founders and businesses make their funding go further. So
Right.
everyone who's ever raised money for a business has been diluted at one point in time. Most people have been diluted too many times. And by the end of it, you're left owning nothing. You're disillusioned from your business. You're not enthused. You're not energized. And you're like, stuff this. And in order for an Aussie tech company to be competitive, we believe that you really can't scale your products and your tech and your team as competitively as a business anywhere else in the world unless you have a global workforce. When we say global workforce, we don't mean have all your employees overseas and no one here. We mean have a balance, but don't have all in one or all in the other. So we're not here to say to everyone, hey, you can't have developers onshore, because Australian developers and engineers are amazing. But we're saying complement your team so that you can go further. You don't have to spend as much having all your eggs in one basket onshore. You can still have technical leadership onshore. You might have a fractional CTO, or one of your co-founders might be a tech whiz and they can take care of that remit. But always for your grunt work and for building out product at pace and cost effectively, we get our clients on average a 60 to 70% saving on resourcing. And if resourcing hasn't become a glaringly expensive item on your balance sheet, it will.
I think it has for a lot of people.
I'm not saying that from a biased perspective. I've witnessed that coming to this business. The best example is, some people listening might know of a business, a fintech called Thriday. So Michael Nusiforo is the founder there. And at the time, he smashed a record on Birchal. He raised 3.3 mil from the crowd, and it's a small business banking solution. He was ready to go and spend 2 million of that on building a team onshore and building his minimum viable product. And Simon Lee, our founder, who just exited Assembly Payments, now Xi Payments, said, no, mate, hang on, let me show you how you can build your MVP for around $500,000. You can have a team offshore, so you've got velocity because you've got a squad, not just 1 and 2, and let me show you how you can get that done. And he got the MVP done for $500,000. He managed to save that money, not get diluted. He's done a deal with NAB Ventures, and his business is now at a point where it's pretty sustainable, or it's primed for growth and taking on capital by choice. And it's a perfect example of a tech company that's done it from day one and has reaped the rewards. So it's not to say that you can't still do it now if you're stuck onshore. You must always consider that. But if you're starting a tech business, my personal view is do it now from the beginning. You've probably seen as VCs and PE firms and fundraising organisations now are looking more and more for profitability or a path to profitability.
Amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because for 20 years it was all about growth at all costs.
Correct.
And it's literally flipped on a dime, and it's like,
correct.
Now we actually want to see you making money.
Or show us a pathway too, or show us how you're doing the things that other people you're trying to compete with would be already doing. And also show us how you've bootstrapped an element of this. Like I feel like more and more they're wanting to see people who've properly put some skin in the game, because we can all go and participate in an incubator, get our first little check, live off our redundancy for 6-12 months, think that everything's rosy. But I genuinely feel funding partners are now looking for people who've actually sweated it. And this is coming from someone who has a low risk appetite as a business owner and couldn't hack that. I'll be the first to put my hand up and say, hey, I've had businesses before and I don't have that appetite to want to just mortgage the farm and go all in.
It's strange coming from a child actor previously, but we'll get to that. Back to Teamified just for a moment. How big's the team now?
Yeah. So there's 230 employees. There's about 140, 150 in Pune in India. But India, as you know, is a very deep base for technical expertise. So developers and engineers that build apps and websites, they're brilliant. Payments, real depth, because it's a hub. Pune is our hub, but in India, as some people may not know, people live far away from each other. So a lot of our clients in Australia who have teams in India will often have them working in a hybrid model. They'll come into the WeWork that we have for them, say 2 days a week, and then work from home 3, very similar to how we all do it. There's about 70 employees in Manila, Philippines. Yep. You like the way I say that?
Nice.
Yeah. It's a beautiful place. We've got a dedicated office there. They're a well-oiled machine. We have some clients there who have full-time in the office. That's because they're customer support and that's what they want for culture. Others are fully remote, and most of them are hybrid again. And then there's about 30 to 40 max in Sri Lanka, and they're all remote. Wow. But the talent we couldn't deny. So we had to present that as an option for clients, because the UI, UX, design, branding, skills you wouldn't expect necessarily in Sri Lanka, brilliant and so cost-effective. Really good communication, and we're an EOR, so an employer of record. So how we differentiate is we employ those employees full-time in their respective countries as if they were a full-time employee in that country. So our Australian client gets an invoice from us, And our employees in India, Sri Lanka, Philippines get healthcare for them and their families.
Yep.
They get maternity, paternity leave, superannuation, taxes, all of the regulatory things that are required for a best case employee in country. When we go up against contracting firms
Yes.
and BPOs, business process outsourcing, they're all people that have a middleman. They have upfront fees. Those people are likely working on several clients at once. Ours are exclusive.
Do you find yourself telling that story to a new prospect just to be clear about what the engagement model is? Because to your point, that's everyone else, what you described. Is
Correct.
It's a
Yep.
middleman outsourcing operation. They'll take 30%.
Yeah.
And they'll even pay
Yeah.
people in country in US dollars.
The two biggest things we tell clients are, because we are not in a new industry, we're in a laggard industry, but we wanted to disrupt it because we believe every second person you talk to who's done offshoring has had a bad experience. Someone's ghosted them. Someone stole their code.
Someone stole money, didn't deliver what we wanted. We got the brief wrong. No.
Correct.
So have been
Yeah.
there, done that.
Correct.
In 2 different countries.
So it's more about educating and handling those objections. Once you overcome them, the two things we talk about are, it sounds simple, right? But when you give healthcare to an employee and their immediate family in countries where most parents and grandparents live with the family,
Yes.
that's incredibly impactful because that employee becomes loyal and also has a lot of pride in what they do. I mean, Christian-based countries, naturally, they want to do a great job. They've got great ethos.
Yep.
But also they want to provide for their family. Because when we employ someone in the Philippines or India or Sri Lanka, we are having an impact on generations from a affordability perspective and lifestyle and their ability to look after extended family. When healthcare is in the mix, because old people get sicker, there's a lot more pride in wanting to do a good job and keep those conditions. The second part of it is, it sounds simple as well, but we train every one of our clients to treat that employee like they're their own. As an example, right, when we find someone an amazing staff member and they play a part in the interview process and they choose them and they kick off, we get them to send them a shirt and a hat and a bag and stationery and headphones that all have the branding of our client. And when that employee starts their role and says on LinkedIn, hey, I've just started a new role as developer at, they'll say our client's name, not Teamified. So it's almost, it's simple, but we show them how to communicate and treat the employee as if they're their own. Aside from a 4 to 5 hour, sometimes only 2 difference in time zone, we get them to participate in meetings because everything's on Zoom now anyway with the Australian staff. We try to get them to never call them their outsourced employee or their offshore employee. We always get them to call our global team member. It sounds simple, doesn't it?
No, it's all about packaging and communication and the definition of how you're engaging with these people. Do you have Teamified people in these places as sort of the hub manager, or how do you go about?
So we have a couple of rules, right? So around 15% of our workforce is non-billable, not working for clients.
Yep.
They're talent managers, HR managers, headhunters. They're people, account managers going out and looking for the best staff. For every 25 tech staff we place for clients, we assign a principal engineer to oversee and quality control the client and the squad. There's always one person per 25 employees looking across them and their projects, making sure that our client's getting a great experience.
Great.
Those people work for Teamified. And what do you know? We've got white and black shirts with logos like
I love it. Looks
every
very
other
similar to the
startup.
t-shirt I have.
Yeah, that's right. But no, it's, the brand looks, I mean, if you go to our website now, Katie Travers, our CMO from Infuse Marketing, she's done an amazing job with our brand. If you go to our website and you look at teamified.com.au, you'll see we look the goods, man. Like there's a serious tech company at play now.
Yeah, so great. So you're officially the mascot for Teamified?
Well, I just figured you got to play to your strengths. Since I started my first corporate job, I jumped on LinkedIn, which I think we'll all agree has been popular and unpopular and popular and unpopular. It's been, and it's very personal for people. I know you're not a huge fan because you've got more of a US network, but to me, I've just grown it slowly. And before it became harder to grow your connections, I went nuts in the beginning. So I got to this tipping point where I've got about 30,000 connection followers or whatever. If anything, it just gives me a little bit of an extra bump every time I post something. I notice that it's easier to get a bit of interaction. I was talking about this earlier, right? I don't know about you, and I'd be fascinated to go and experience what LinkedIn is like in America and in Europe and in other countries, because it feels like abroad, it's much more of a job searching recruitment platform.
I would say that's what it is here in Australia.
Really?
Yeah.
Because here it feels like a businessman or woman's playground wanting to be a really poor social media influencer in a business space. Well, because Instagram and TikTok are like the huge platforms. Then you've got LinkedIn that a young person wouldn't touch, but old people like me trying to say, hey, I know how to be an influencer. Look at me. I've taken a really bad selfie. Look, So, yeah.
I think the question is, to your point, who you are, what you do determines how much you're on LinkedIn. I think.
Yeah. Oh,
I could be wrong on the demographics, but I think the larger population using LinkedIn are on there looking for work.
There is a famous meme of the guy, and it's like reality, unemployed, LinkedIn, high performance advisor. I've been disciplined with it because I would say that I didn't have as much time to promote on the platform when I had my own business, just because I'm executing for people, bringing in new business, managing employees to edit, and then I'm managing my well-being, keeping sane, running a business.
Yep.
And then on top of that, I'm like, hey, got to project a really positive image that everything's great and we just work with all these amazing people. It served me by always using it. But yes, I agree that some people love it, but they're just not posting on it as much because they don't have a role.
Well, I mean, a lot of my connections don't post at all. They're engaged.
They must be really getting a kick, Todd, out of seeing you in their feed every day.
Maybe
They're like, Todd's famous. He's LinkedIn famous.
But as someone who's experimented before with advertising on LinkedIn,
yeah,
your target audience is definitely there. The question, though, is how frequent are they there? So,
well, yeah, I mean, we run paid LinkedIn ads.
And how much does that contribute to?
Well, we run LinkedIn ads, paid ads, which aren't cheap, as you know.
I was going to get to that.
Oh,
the
mate,
difference
yeah.
between meta advertising and LinkedIn advertising is,
we post every day and we rotate it amongst us. So we go, righto, today we want to post from the personal profile of me or Simon or Dean. Tomorrow we want to post from the Teamified page because we want it to resonate with our Indian audience, as an example. So we're going to celebrate Diwali tomorrow, as an example, right? We're recording this on Halloween, the 31st of October, but tomorrow, 1st November, with the moon and everything, is Diwali in India. We've got 120,000 followers on LinkedIn, but we've done that cleverly. But I couldn't tell you categorically how many or what leads has come from LinkedIn. But we are resigned as a business to the fact that we believe that being top of mind and having our awareness and our brand out there, and we have people tell us all the time, oh my God, I see all your stuff on LinkedIn. So we're resigned to the fact that we have no expectation almost from getting a lead from all the stuff we do on LinkedIn, right? Because we run a sophisticated virtual acquisition campaign through paid advertising on Google AdWords and email and a little bit of AI. And that's where we try to measure how much can we get a lead, how much can we get a sale for. So we don't have an expectation with LinkedIn and all that stuff, but it works wonders for us manufacturing community. Like we have a massive community now, which I'm super proud of because we've invested a bit over the last 12 months. We obviously have a big group of people that play basketball, go to a lunch that we put on, free lunch and drinks, a guest speaker. And we've been consistent with that. We've invested in personalised uniforms and we've invested in this community element. And I would say that having that community of 85 signed up referral partners and about 350 in a LinkedIn group, it now organically drives us just through them thinking of us referral leads a week.
That's awesome.
You don't you reckon?
That's really impressive.
Yeah, we set a goal of getting a lead a day for our business through our paid means, which is 20 a month.
So you mentioned Google.
Yep.
So Google, LinkedIn, any meta in that? Or?
We haven't tried Meta yet, but because we've designed landing pages and we've got a big process in place, we can't discount it.
Different audiences at different price point.
When you say Meta, that means obviously not just Facebook, but I don't know, like personally, it feels like Facebook's dead personally, but then is it still well and truly alive for lead gen for business? I don't know. I just don't have enough exposure.
Personally for us, we've tried Instagram more than Facebook. I haven't been on Facebook for 8 or 9 years. To your point, I didn't see a sort of a natural use for me. There are things you want to post and share publicly and most things you don't want to share publicly.
I get that.
But we just got great engagement through Instagram with little to no throughput as a lead.
That's good.
LinkedIn was very laser targeted but at high cost, and Google was more of a scattergun at medium to high cost again.
Yeah.
But Google gets people who are actually in the buying frame of mind. So, they're targeting keywords, driving ads to, well, I'm looking for camping equipment or I want to go to Bali or whatever it might be.
Yeah, I want to look younger.
The frame of mind of the consumer is completely different to presenting ads on LinkedIn, hoping you hit a C-suite person where your copy resonates with a massive pain point they're trying to solve, then you're off to the races. And that's certainly happened to us. We picked up a couple of $50,000 projects from our LinkedIn advertising. Lots of sign-ups from Meta, but little to no conversion. And then Google, a mixture of sort of both worlds. Tell us about Brandon Burns, the yesteryear.
The yesteryear. Well, yeah,
There's talk on the street that you were once a child actor.
Just to confirm, I'm like a D grade actor.
No, but tell us all about that. I had no idea.
So my mum was a school teacher, a sports teacher.
So was my mum.
There you go, right? Says so much, Todd. I really get you now. My dad was a milkman. They met playing cricket, right? And my sister was like a prodigy, amazing, gifted, right? And then here's me. I absolutely love sport, played all sports, average. But I had a decent singing voice. So I got into singing lessons early, but about 16, going to a singing school that taught me how to songwrite, which was powerful. Wow. And then I hooked up with a producer around that time and learned how to songwrite and produce songs, which was just so cool because the more you write, the better you get, the quicker you get better. It's amazing how it works. 10,000 hours of mastery with anything. But when I was 15, I had an agent from about the age of 12 and I did a lot of commercials. So I did Nintendo commercials with Michael Klim. I did the Coddy's ad, my dad picks the fruit. I did Round the Twist, Blue Healers. I did Neighbours. But when I was 15, I got cast in a show called High Flyers on Channel 10. And we filmed at Global Television in Nunawading in the adjacent studio to where Neighbours was filmed for 30, 40 years, still is now. This show was all based around a circus. And so there was 17 of us kids. In between filming, we had a classroom on set, a tutor, a full-time school teacher, and we do our schoolwork because there was varying ages of 8 all the way up to 17. I was 15. And I lived with a host family in Melbourne because I was from regional country Victoria, Geelong, and then came home on the weekends. That was my first experience working properly and full-time. And that paid off the deposit of the first house, mate. So there you go. It was good for me in the end. I always look back and then go, wow, there's my tangible, quantifiable reward for working as a child. And then when I was 17, I went for the very first season of Australian Idol. I was 6th in line. So I got there at like 3 a.m. in Melbourne, that is. I got
was this in winter or summer?
Yeah, it felt like a winter audition. Yeah, it was pretty cold outside Rod Laver. And I was the first person through in Melbourne. At that time, you had to go to pre-auditions. So Andrew G and James Matheson sort of approved me with the producers. And then you'd come back 3 days later and we did like a simulated audition for Marsha Hines, Mark Holden and Ian Dicko Dixon. And then I got all the way through to the semi-finals. So I had people texting and ringing 1902 numbers, 55 cents a call to vote.
What year was this?
2003.
Wow.
Yeah, 2 decades ago, 17.
Wow.
And I sang at the opera steps, the steps of the Opera House. This is back just before YouTube, social media, Facebook took off. So TV was still peaking right before it's falling off a cliff.
Yeah.
It was the main source of media.
Sure.
Prime time was still a thing. It's fascinating. Prime time is still a thing in America, but it doesn't really exist in Australia anymore. At the time it was. Like Australian Idol sort of was what MasterChef became.
Yes,
massive behemoth of a show. Especially when you got the buy-in of the public. I used being on that at 17 to really put some distance between me and my competition because I could say I was Brandon from a reality television show. I had a profile of sorts that eventually expires as it does, right? You get a good 5-10 years out of it. You can say, I'm so-and-so from so-and-so, and you get booked. I worked full-time as a performer till about the age of 25. I made a living from being a performer for quite some time. Did a couple of short films. I revisited method acting classes only about 4 years ago. And it made me realise I'd never treated the craft of acting seriously enough. I'd always just got cast. Like I remember as a child, my parents would have me in the car 2-3 times a week, driving up to Melbourne, going to a casting. This is before COVID, obviously, and before people now do virtual castings and everyone submits a self-tape. And so I'd just gotten so much work. And then as an adult, I remember going to this method acting class. It was with a guy in St Kilda. He's amazing, Peter Carlos. He used to work in Hollywood for about 25 years, Greek-Australian guy. And he was De Niro's acting partner on Raging Bull. And he also worked a lot with Mark Wahlberg. And he had a gig at Paramount for about 15 years as a script doctor. So him and his colleague would get paid 20 grand and they'd be sent a script from the studio and say, hey, it doesn't work, can you fix it? Fix the ending, fix whatever. And they'd do that in a week and then send it back. So that was how he made his money, but his love was method acting. And in the first class, I rocked up and there was this guy in the studio, Todd, and he looked homeless. He sits down on the couch in the classroom and Peter's sitting up the front and no one else is really around. There's music playing. It looked like he pulled out a syringe and he started shooting up. He was sobbing and crying and it was so intense. And then he kind of just got up and left. And I said to Peter, what did he just... And Peter said, oh, no, never, no, we never do that. But it was so believable and real. And it was almost like these classes were run where there was no, hi everyone, the class is starting now. It's just, we're into it. Yeah, and all the fellow actors, no one talked to each other. So it was almost like they were rocking up in character or they were just there to do the work. And I remember the first hour and a half of this 3-hour acting lesson was sensory work. And we literally have to sit in a chair, close our eyes, relax our body, and then simulate our bodies kind of like letting go of energy. And it was almost like an exercise in training your body and your mind not to get distracted every 3 to 5 seconds whilst you're in the moment playing a character in a scene. And it was the hardest thing to learn to do. And then obviously, you know, we did classes where he taught us how to be drunk on camera. So he coached us through it, right? We're all drinking soda water with lime, thinking it's alcohol. And then he telling us, imagine you're at a party and you're talking to people and you've got to come across drunk. It was so profound, but also humbling to realise that I hadn't done the work. And he talked about neck up acting. He talked about how
everything's in the face.
He said everything shouldn't be. He said you don't go and want to be on Home and Away and America's Most Wanted like Chris Hemsworth. He said you got to act from your toes all the way up to your head. And the best example is Bradley Cooper. He talked about Bradley Cooper, how he's actually a method actor of like 30 years, studied at the New York Fine Arts Academy, didn't get his break for ages. And what happens with method acting is early in your journey, the teacher will often ask you to choose a character from history, like a really old, ancient person.
Yep.
And they expect you to come to class dressed as that person or bring an outfit and do the simplest of things as that person. So I remember I chose Ulysses S. Grant, one of the first presidents of America. And you could choose Caesar, whoever it is. Then you had to come to class and he'd say, right, I just want you to go and wash your hands at the basin as them. I want you to go and write a letter as them. And it was all this simple exercise in training you to be a character, but fully embodied. It was such a learning experience.
Speaking of Bradley Cooper, one of the most profound things I watched was, it's on YouTube, the actor's studio. A young Bradley Cooper's in the audience. He asks De Niro.
Yeah.
Bradley Cooper's probably like 19 or 20. It's wonderful to watch because he's just a nobody acting student talking to De Niro, who he would later star with.
And how fascinating, but that it's not dissimilar to a startup journey. The acting teacher used to always say, treat this as if it's what you can do for the rest of your life. But that's a pretty hard thing to be asked.
And it scares a lot of people. It just puts you off completely. And I think it comes back to the imposter syndrome as well. It's like, well, how much of your own character is in this versus how much do I expend on the outside to convince people?
My parents wanted me to go to university and finish university, so it was a big thing. But then it's like, wow, there's such important years where if you don't know what you want to do, then you need flexibility.
Yep.
Probably wouldn't push yourself to do that. You just go try a bunch of things.
Right, yeah.
Acting.
In the time we got left, you were recently at South by Southwest in Sydney. What's one or two key takeaways you got from that experience? I think it was in its second year this year.
Yeah, second year. Everything's a new experience and you can take something from it. I would say the number one thing I got out of it was, and it's unique to my circumstance, was meeting new people in a community that's likely based in Sydney, or there's people there from other places I'm not usually able to access. An ideal event for me is relevant speakers, relevant sessions, and decent, dedicated networking opportunities. Keep it simple, right? Yep. This one was everything, and rightfully so, good on them. South by Southwest had so much going on, I couldn't tell you a lot of what that was. Maybe because I wasn't there to see it, the film, the music. It's a big investment, so I hope they get their return. Maybe they did. I wasn't really gravitating to going and hearing the lady from Canberra speak, even though I love her story. It's hard to say, mate, because we tried to make the most of it from meeting people and also a business sense, but it was just so spread out. I don't believe it's anything like the one abroad. You've been to that. I haven't been to that.
I went to the one in Austin in 2018, but I haven't been to the one in Sydney. The biggest problem was trying to find someone to stay. It gets booked out 6 to 9 months in advance. I ended up crashing with some other Aussies. We try to make it work. But it's similar, and they're different layers of interest: film, social, technology.
It can be overwhelming quickly. And so we really said to ourselves, let's not have any expectations around having to go to heaps of things and see heaps of people.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just find a couple of events that are working and going well, and let's sink our teeth into those.
Yep.
It's good to get away with your team. The time you have away with your team and the conversations you can have are just as important as when you socialise and you meet other people.
Yep.
Most people are introverted, so people are going to be looking to have more one-to-one connection anyway. Most of the fun and the business was done outside of the event, but the event needs to happen for that to happen, so I'm grateful for that.
Brandon Burns.
Todd Pedler.
Thanks, mate. That was great. Any closing remarks or comments?
No, I would just say how cool that you have supported this initiative and we're able to do this, like a long-form chat. It's been nice to have an opportunity to sort of talk about that in a longer form and reflect, because it's now been 12 months since I've been there.
Yeah.
Stepped away from my business and done it for 12 months, and it's flown. Like everyone says that, but it really has.
Yes.
But that's the first time I've actually sat back and someone's helped me reflect properly. So
Great.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.